Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. Let's jump right in. So, basically, space tech, Medtech seems to dominate and setting the tone for the beginning of the year. So that's pretty interesting. Let's jump right in with the first news, the biggest raise of the week, FTNet, sales tech startup in the pharma sector, raising 3 million from angel investors. So FTNet basically facilitate the connection between pharmacies and big pharma. So it's a kind of a specialized B2B marketplace. And this is interesting because basically they're trying to disrupt sort of a very old marketplace and relationship between big pharma plus local pharmacies and throwing basically digital tools to actually make that happen. So interesting application. Very well, good round, I would say. We don't have too many details on that, but definitely it's one of the biggest of last week, so definitely worth mentioning. What is your take on that, Nick?
Most interesting bit is that when you think that the market is, perfectly functioning, well-oiled, and everything is going smooth, the market where pharmacy drugs and items get from the pharma industry to the pharmacies, someone spots an opportunity and creates a product, and this is one of these cases. So I find it interesting. That there is an opportunity there. If you think about it, I think most pharmacies are actually using the traditional hub and spoke distribution and traditional ways to get assets to provision to suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quite interesting.
Awesome. So going back to space economy, so we've seen some space deal last week. Again, this week is something moved. So the space economy is really living an optimization and accessibility of infrastructure golden age, I would say, from what we keep seeing. So SPiN, in this particular case, space tech startup raising 1.64 million from Galaxia, Scientifica VC and Sofinnova. So first of all, let's understand a little bit what SPiN is essentially doing. So from the website, they basically make clear that they're a provider of innovative modular space manufacturing solution. So essentially, the idea is that how engineering in space has been handled is changing. So right now, everything is model-based, system engineering methodology based. So really the idea is to, when building like space components, everything is made in modules and with digital simulation. And the focus is really to see how exactly each piece interacts with each other. And they're really like lower the cost and make everything more effective. And the SPiN is playing in this market by providing this tool, which is called MA61C, which is essentially an adapter. It's a very advanced adapter that allows basically parts of the satellite to effectively and not like very cheaply communicate among each other. So definitely a golden age to how exactly make things cheaper, quicker, faster, and more usable. So the space economy is actually benefiting from that wave. What's your feel on this?
No, yeah, I totally agree. As you know, we have a fund investing in the space economy. We've seen this trend coming up. We've got a lot of opportunities emerging from the European market in particular. This is another interesting bit. In a sense, there's privatization of the space economy, so meaning more private companies are entering the markets with products and try basically to industrialize the entire process of space tech. Is a very interesting trend, one that will define the future years. And as a side note, did you notice that MA61C, if you look at it from an angle, sounds like magic.
Oh, very interesting.
It reads like magic.
That's your engineering soul coming out and thinking like
Come
one of them. That's awesome.
on.
That's true. That's
Think
very
a
true.
minute. That's magic. Okay.
It's magic, man. It's magic. That's cool. Let's
I
take
will
a
also
look at the
spend
investors.
exactly. I was saying the same. I was going to say the same.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's talk about Galaxia for a second. My understanding is that this is part of the CDP tech transfer ecosystem in general. They really focus on early stage to seed the investment, 250 to 1 million ticket. And what is interesting is that they have a very, very focus on deep tech and a very solid technical incubation program supported by Oblo. So I was not too much aware of Oblo. I'm not too much into deep tech, but these guys apparently like are in the forefront of actually supporting companies to develop like their own like deep tech projects. So very interesting interaction between CDP going specific on a vertical and involving a very very specialized incubator and accelerator. So very interesting play here.
If I may add a couple of bits of information on this, CDP has many funds, direct funds, fund of funds that are investing and supporting the ecosystem. And there is one specific fund with a kind of a mixed mission, with doing a lot of different stuff. That's the Tech Transfer Fund. And they're doing they're, they're having an interesting approach in a sense. They created innovation hubs, uh, thematic innovation hubs about robotics, about farming, about, as in the case of Galaxia, space tech and deep tech, um, providing capacity to invest, but also to support very early stage startups. And then the Tech Transfer Fund is also a fund of fund investor in deep tech funds.
Interesting.
Yeah, so an interesting, mixed strategy for this specific vehicle. That's quite sizable because from the website they have 285 millions under management. So quite a bit of firepower.
Awesome. Moving on, Scientifica VC, also very interesting play. They are supporting basically like all the sort of the chain of value from university to actually early stage companies. They have a very interesting program for students in the STEM fields. They also offer money for researchers to actually develop their own project. Very interestingly, and then of course early stage companies that are like newly formed. So it's a very nice bridge that they're building there. I don't know how effective that's going to push all the research forward, but definitely it's a very very solid idea to build this bridge. They have quite a sizable portfolio actually, so that's an interesting player in the ecosystem for sure.
For example, a specific quantum investment vehicle or
I think
carve
so.
out.
Yes.
Yeah. So very interesting.
100%. And then, of course, Lazio Innova, big player, has been a big player for decades, maybe, I would say, in terms of the innovation ecosystem in Italy in general. So right now, this fund has Lazio Innova is 21 million in under management, the latest version of it at least. And so, yeah, very, very present investor, I would say, co-investor as well in particular. So very, very interesting. All right. So moving to medtech, medtech is and continues to be one of the big sectors favored by Italian early stage investors, I would say. So Panakes Partner joined Sofinnova Partner, another investor in the 20 million seed round raised by Disco Pharmaceutical, a biotech startup. So we've seen Panakes like very very active. They're one of the biggest and active investor. But before we move to that, let's understand a little bit more about what this company is doing. And we are always taking the perspective of ignorant people in the medtech space. So apologies for imprecision. So essentially, the first term to understand, I think, is what I didn't know it existed: surfaceome. I don't know how Nick you are familiar with this terminology. So it's the basically
Not
all
at
these.
all.
Okay, good. Interesting because so as you know, we talk about genome, we talk about words with ohm, right? Just to identify an ecosystem. Surface ohm is basically the cataloging of all the molecules that are present on the surface of a cell. So why is this relevant? This is relevant because essentially variation in what is happening on the surface of a cell can be a very, very precise signal on certain disease that might be starting developing, including cancer and other type of diseases. So people are really looking close to the surface and what's going on in the surface of the cell. So surfaceome discovery technology basically enables a comprehensive map of the cancer cell surface so that people can actually identify druggable targets, and that's the idea. So this company, Disco Pharmaceutical, is basically specializing in this and trying to identify at scale new targets so they can actually develop drug. So having said that, we learned a new term. It's an interesting angle for Medtech for sure. Sofinnova is one of the big pan-European funds in the Medtech space and life science that is basically very present in the market with 2.5 billion under management, 7 funds with 7 different strategies in the life science space. So huge investor and very specialized co-investor being, of course, Panakes, focusing in Europe, Italy, of course, and Israel, and very, very active and notable investor in the field, I would say. So that's what I wanted to say about this deal in particular.
Yeah. Nice.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, space tech and medtech are dominating, seems to. So let's also talk about very interesting.
Blockchain.
Yeah, let's talk about blockchain. Very curious. Exactly. Thank you. So Landit, B2B credit sharing startup, raised an undisclosed amount from DPixel, a native tokenized fundraise. Seed Venture was the platform enabling the deal. So any thoughts on this one?
I was very curious about knowing more about this deal. I know Pixel very well. I had been working there a few years ago. They currently are part of the Sella ecosystem, the Sella Bank ecosystem. So the bank very active in the innovation space in Italy and in technology space. And the Pixel today is an operator in the acceleration and incubation space. And they incubated, among others, 2 startups, Seed Venture and Lendit. And Seed Venture is offering this tokenization technology, and Lendit is a traditional, let me say so, startup in the credit sharing space. And I find it very interesting that Pixel used one startup to invest in the other, using a native token on the platform. And the interesting bit is that the token is immediately liquid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unlike the traditional VC investment, that's absolutely illiquid by design sometimes.
Interesting.
Quite often.
Yeah, definitely something to monitor, I would say. Very, very interesting way to proceed on this one. Very cool.
Yeah. Are we entering into the next wave of blockchain tech?
Yeah.
Will it be similar to the previous one, or will it be more fundamental in a sense?
That's a good question because some things survived the big apocalypse, the crypto apocalypse, including blockchain technology for industry, this kind of financing. I've spoken with people still thinking about DAOs. Nick, imagine. So they're still there,
They're still out there
somewhere. Yes, not sure how, but they're still out there. So very, very interesting elements to definitely remember about.
I'm very curious because a lot of banks, for example, you remember in 2017, 18, where everybody had a blockchain strategy. Every bank, for example, we're going to tokenize all our ledgers, and then everybody silently dropped the projects.
Yep.
Maybe something is coming back. So this is
interesting.
This is something to look into.
All right, let's get back to physical goods. New generation of wine shop is emerging, digitized, data-aware, and education-oriented. So, interestingly, we are seeing Italian startup acquiring other companies more and more frequently. In this case, in particular, Winelivery acquired Become Some. So Winelivery basically has a very cool, interesting value proposition. Essentially, they are going to deliver your wine within 30 minutes. And they have a big catalog of liquor, spirits, and wines to deliver. and they did 3 crowdfunding campaigns. They have like investor like X Equity and Jellyfy, and they've been basically opening like a few stores around the country, including Rome, Milan, and a few other stores in franchise. So it's an interesting model that seems to fly. What is interesting is that they're very much entering the data and the media business. And in this case, with Become Some, that's a very interesting step. So for 2 reasons. One, as you always mention, small startup acquiring other smaller startup, or medium startup acquiring other startup for integration and of operation. That's very interesting. But also the idea of pushing the education side. That's also an interesting angle for a wine first sort of a company. So Become Some, for people that are listening, is a prep course website that essentially help you out to pass the sommelier exam in Italy, but also a few international one like the WSET. So it's interesting. It's just not doing delivery, but also fostering education, working on marketing, and of course, as the Winelivery people, I'm sure they're aware, data is essential here, not only for the business, but also for customer acquisition and engagement. So very, very interesting play.
Yeah, in a sense, it's a play by the books, right? So you create a products and then you start training the users to better use the products.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Surprisingly enough, though, we've seen wine companies or online wine marketplace. Nobody did this move before, even if ex post. I mean, basically pointing on the education side, like the professional education side. I mean, I don't remember anyone like going hard on this one. So this is interesting that they're kind of, I don't know if the first or maybe one of the first that are like taking this angle. So pretty interesting.
This is good, but I do remember. I don't have memories of previous operations like this one. But good point.
Awesome. Nick, all right. So that concludes this week's episode. So thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jack, for hosting, and see you in a week.